Time for the epilogue where the teenagers die. Last time,
Yeah,
the teenage, not the teen, well, they are teenager. The cheerleader's best friend and the cheerleader herself were ripped apart.
they were both ripped apart, and didn't a guy's head get decapitated?
Yeah, that was the friend. He first got his arm ripped off, and then just got his head straight ripped off. And then the girl herself, she got her arms, her legs, and her arms ripped off first. Then her flipped upside down to have her legs ripped off. Then flipped back up right to
Right.
have her head ripped off.
Ages 12 and up, everybody.
We don't have time for this, Lucia whispered intently to Adrian. Adrian looked up from where he knelt next to Wade, who was doubled up, dry heaving, having already emptied his stomach over a decayed tangle of ripped off arms and legs. The glistening, partially digested food painted yellow streaks along a molted form crusted with dried blood. The sickening
He's
reeks of
like
it.
throwing up right on the arms.
Yeah, he's vomiting right over the dead bodies. In a different
Oh.
I remember how in the party room there was that already big pile of dead
Oh
construction
yeah, the big
workers.
pile of the construction workers, yeah.
Yeah, they ran out of the room where the cheerleader was killed, and now this dude's just vomiting all over the dead bodies in the party room.
Dude, at least go to a corner, not on top of the dead bodies. All that blood and decaying flesh will make you vomit more.
Yeah. The sickening reek of acids and bile cut through the musty smell of the room. Adrian, his eyes red, his face wet with tears that he was letting run unashamedly down his perfect cheeks. Oh yeah, she has a super huge crush on this guy, and his girlfriend was the cheerleader.
Right. I remember Adrian being very hot as they described him.
And I don't know why you would describe someone crying over their dead boyfriend or girlfriend as having
Also,
tears down their perfect cheeks.
did the Urkel kid die?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay, not yet. What if he's like the last survivor?
That would be something.
Something.
He nodded once, but he didn't move. Lucia, struggling to keep her own stomach from unloading its contents next to Wade's, turned to watch the archway that separated the old pizzeria's dining room from its lobby. She winced when Jace squeezed her hand so hard her knuckles cracked. Jace had grabbed her hand as they had all run down the hallway, away from the thing that killed Hope. His hand was clammy and cold, but fear gave his fingers strength. He tugged at Lucia's arm, clearly sharing her desire to move on before the metal monster caught up to them. Joel suddenly reached down and grabbed Wade by his upper arm. Come on, he hissed. Wade, his 6-foot athletic physique diminished by shock and grief, didn't resist as Joel yanked him to his feet. Wade wouldn't have stayed on his feet if Joel hadn't propped him up, and he wouldn't have moved if Joel hadn't started dragging him, like an oversized rag doll, toward the back of the vast, red-walled room. We need to get out of here, Joel said unnecessarily. Duh, Lucia thought. She had to stifle a giggle. The light laughter would have given away how freaked out she was, and she was working hard to look and act like seeing someone ripped apart wasn't that big a deal. Yeah, keep telling yourself that, she thought.
Yeah.
Joel continued to half carry Wade past the piles of dismantled animatronic endoskeletons and detached human body parts. Their slopping, scaring footsteps sounded horribly loud, and they echoed through the large, stage-edged room. Adrian, who had straightened when Joel began manhandling Wade, wiped away his tears. Where are you going? He called out softly to Joel. Away from here, Joel flung back over his shoulder. Adrian looked at Lucia and Jace. Then he stared past Lucia's shoulder, and his brows twitched in something that looked like surprise. Lucia whirled, shivers rippling down her spine in the sudden conviction that the awful thing had snuck up behind her. But it hadn't. Adrian was looking at Kelly, who was standing just a foot or so behind Lucia. Kelly's face was unexpectedly placid. She was alert, yes. Her gaze was fixed in the lobby, but she didn't have the bug-eyed, pasty skin look that everyone else had. Kelly, shy and quiet Kelly, didn't look like someone who had just seen her best friend violently dismembered. Maybe Kelly was dissociating mood, Lucia thought. It was a realistic way to handle severe trauma, but was it one that would keep her alive? A crunch came from the hallway. Not too close, but close enough. Adrian motioned for Lucia, Jason, and Kelly to follow him, and he in turn trotted after Joel and Wade, who were headed toward the doorway to the back hallway. As she hurried past a tangle of bar-height stools, Lucia kicked up a cloud of old red confetti, watching the tiny pieces of paper wave into the air. Lucia tried to tell herself that she and the others would be able to hide from the deadly thing that killed Hope until they could find a way out of the abandoned restaurant. She had a feeling she was lying. Big time. Yeah, I don't think any of you are getting out of this, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that they killed Hope is a metaphor.
Hope is lost.
Hope is lost, yeah. Abandon all hope.
Star, star, star. Joel hauled Wade into the back hallway, propped his friend against the wall, and held him there with the flat of his hand. He leaned in and got in Wade's face. Dude, you need to get a grip. You want to die too? Wade, his face smeared with tears, his breath rank and sour, blinked red eyes at Joel. Joel sighed and gave Wade a light head slap. Wade grunted and frowned, but the head slap worked. Wade shook off Joel and pushed away from the wall. His legs held him. He wiped his face. Joel exhaled. Good. A sibling friend wasn't going to be a helpful friend. And Joel knew he would need help if he was going to get out of this hellhole. Joel was definitely going to get out. No way was he going to end up like Hope or like Nick. Before Hope was attacked by the massive metallic creature, she told him that the thing had pulled Nick's head off. At the time, Joel had thought she was hysterical. But then he'd seen the creature do the same thing to Hope. That was not going to happen, Joel. No way.
Why do I have a feeling he's the next one?
I don't know, honestly. I don't know who's next. We just know they're all gonna die because that seems to be the theme going on with this Epilogue series.
Yeah, they're like all gonna die in horrible way.
The taps of several footsteps made Joel turn toward the dining room doorway. He wasn't scared. They weren't the creature's footsteps. Those were distinctive. These steps belonged to the others. Adrian, Jace, and the two girls clustered together as they joined Joel and Wade. You okay? Adrian asked Wade. Wade nodded. Sorry, I... Forget it, Adrian said. We're all... He stopped and swallowed hard. Joel was relieved that was all they said. What good would it do to talk about what just happened? What now? Jace asked. The merry little artist's voice was squeaky. Joel suppressed an eye roll. He didn't like Jason and had no idea why Adrian hung out with him. It was embarrassing. When Lucy and I were in the office, Kelly spoke up, we saw an old radio. We might be able to get that working and call for help. Joel raised an eyebrow. He never heard Kelly say more than 3 or 4 words at a time. And whenever he'd heard her talk, her voice had always been soft and breathy. Now her voice was strong and smooth, confident. That's a good idea, Lucia said. Might be able to jerry-rig it to call out. But the office is right next to parts and service. Jace squeaked again. That's a good point, Joel said. He did agree with the mouse, but parts and service was where Hope had died. Besides, Joel added, I think it's a better idea to just get out of here. We haven't thoroughly explored the room at the end of the hall. Maybe there's an exit through there. He gestured toward the far end of the hallway. Adrian shook his head. We saw that room when we were running around the first time, trying to find a way out. But it's just the systems room, the furnace and all that. There's no way out in there. Joel scowled. We didn't try that hard to find a way. We just ran on to the next room, looking for a window that would open. Maybe we missed a crawl space or something. Adrian pressed his lips together, thinking. Joel thought Adrian looked like a priss when he did that, like stuck-up royalty or something. A thud sounded from the dining room. Discussion was over. The whole group began scampering down the hallway, away from the dining room. The first room off to the right of the hallway was the employees' lounge and locker room. Adrian turned into that room. Lucia, Kelly, and Jace followed him. Wade started that way too, but Joel grabbed his arm. Wade made a little sound of protest, but he didn't say anything as Joel jerked him away from the employees' lounge and pulled him further down the hall. A short way behind him, Joel heard heavy taps interspersed with a hissing rasp. The taps were nearing the hallway's entrance. "Joel!" Adrian called out. Joel didn't answer. He kept running, dragging Wade along with him. He had to get to the little room at the end of the hallway before the killing thing got to the hallway and spotted them. The others could do whatever they wanted. Forget that stupid old radio. Joel wanted out now. He was going to find a way. Yeah, he's probably next. Oh.
Side note about like old radios and stuff. There is as I was exploring a security breach on one of my live streams, I found a old school transistor radio, and it's like right outside of the post-it note room, the same table where you find the blueprints. And I looked around and I wasn't able to find the duplicate model of the radio in the game anywhere. So I'm wondering just what it's doing there.
Probably this radio that was pulled out of there by Vanny.
It's weird that it's just like right outside the post-it note room, because if there was someone living in that post-it note room and there's like all these killer animatronics around, did they use the radio to call for help, or was it ever used, or is it just there? I don't know.
No idea.
No idea.
Star, star, star. Lucia grabbed Adrian's arm and pulled him into the employees' lounge. "Let them go," she whispered as she quickly pushed the door closed. Adrian didn't protest as Lucia led him away from the door. Adrian's self-assurance had left him, she realized. She didn't fault him for that. He had, after all, just watched his girlfriend get murdered by... What was that thing anyway? A robot? No, more than that. Monster? No, a creature. Lucia settled on creature because it sounded less formidable. No, it's just a robot. It's literally just a robot, sorry.
It's literally just an endoskeleton. Or was it like did they say that there were other animatronics that they saw, like a cat or something?
Empty suits and broke and non-functioning endos that were like torn apart already. And this
Oh,
one had put on one of the suits.
okay, and it used like the cat one, I think.
And no, it used the dog one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, these characters we don't know unless they're like the Funko Circus animatronics that
Yeah, I
came out.
think they might be the circus ones because one of the ones that were described in the last epilogue had green overalls and was orange, and Circus Foxy is orange with green overalls.
Yeah, and Circus Foxy kind of looks like a dog because he has droopy ears instead of like pointed ears a fox normally has.
Mm-hmm.
So I can understand their confusion.
Mm-hmm. She doubted her brain would go for that word trick, but it was worth a try. She didn't have time to ponder what to call their adversary, and they didn't have time for shock and grief. They needed to think. Lucia flicked a couple of dusty, sweaty curls from her eyes. She could only imagine how wild her hair looked. She glanced down. Her long Patrick Velour skirt, one of her favorites, was torn and filthy. But that was the least of her problems. Lucia turned toward Kelly, who was already weaving her way around the overturned tables and chairs, kicking up discarded papers that looked like timesheets and shriveled packages of napkins. She headed toward the door on the far side of the room. That door led to the restaurant's front hallway, at the end of which was the office. Chase, thankfully, had let go of Lucia's hand when they'd run down the hall. Now he had huddled against one of the metal lockers. He hugged himself. His black-rimmed glasses where he fussed the collar of his checkered shirt and straightened the pins in his pocket protector. Nervous twitches. Outside the closed door, the hissing, rasping taps moved down the hall. The already dim lights in the staff room went out. Lucia froze and held her breath. She could tell the others were doing the same thing. The blackness was so fully complete that Lucia could almost feel it physically, like a viscous cloak enfolding itself around her. A scream tried to claw its way up her throat, but she tampered it down. The lights came back on. They flickered, but they didn't go out again. Kelly made a small psst sound. Lucia looked toward her. Kelly gestured toward the front hall. She pantomimed using a radio. Lucia nodded. She stepped carefully toward Adrian and touched his hand. He startled, but he remained silent. Lucia pointed toward Kelly and gestured for Adrian to follow her as she picked her way over the debris littering the white and black checkered floor. The floor was covered with filthy plastic plates and cups and several rusting robotic parts. Lucia avoided them as she approached Jason and took his arm. He was totally malleable. She easily led him toward where Kelly stood by the doorway to the front hall. Lucia didn't look back to see if Adrian was following them. As much as she liked Adrian, she wasn't going to keep him from getting to the radio. Good. Smart. At least she's smart in that regard. The need to survive trumped over an unrequited crush any day.
Oh, okay, so they're just going to the radio to call for help then?
Yeah. And she's not bothering to see if the boy that she has a crush on is following her because she wants to live more than to make sure he stays
Yeah,
alive.
yeah. Rip Adrian.
I don't think he's going to die anytime soon, though.
Yeah, they made him out to be a main character pretty early on, so he wouldn't.
Star, star, star. We should have gone with the others. Yes, you should have, Wade said as Joel shut the door to the systems room. Shh, Joel said. He gazed around and spotted what he was looking for. A heavy wood crate was sitting against the far wall in the small L-shaped room. He hurried over, lifted it, and carried it back to shove it in front of the closed door. Joel knew that if he could lift it, the crate wasn't heavy enough to stop the metal monster capable of popping off human heads and limbs. But maybe it would slow the thing down. Maybe the creature followed the others. As terrible as the thought was, Joel really hoped it did. No, it walked right past their room and headed towards you. His purple and yellow team shirt to wipe sweat from his face. Like all the other rooms in the old pizzeria, this one was filled with dust. Your greatest enemy.
I know! Ah!
1 later.
Rant over. Sorry, continue.
It also held a rusting old furnace bulging with pipes and chutes that extended in several directions that were entangled with broken down scaffolding. This room, unlike the rest of the rooms of the abandoned restaurant, was 2 stories tall. A couple of the furnace chutes extended up the top of the room's high ceiling. The rest of them bent around the corner in the room's L. The room smelled faintly of rotten eggs. Joel didn't know much about furnaces, but he remembered the smell coming from his grandpa's old one when it was going bad. Yeah, that's the smell of gas. This particular one wasn't functioning. Joel didn't think, but something in this room was running. You could hear a humming sound that alternated with a rapid, rhythmic whoosh. Sounded like a fan. Joel glanced at Wade, who had slumped into the dirty floor. He sat with his back against the room's cement wall. His knees were bent, and he had his arms wrapped around them. He stared into space. His long, usually shining hair hung in strings over his face. Joel shook his head. Who knew Wade was so fragile? Joel and Wade had been friends ever since Joel had made it onto the football team. Already the star center of the school's basketball team, Joel had thought that also being the football team's star offensive lineman, the Mountain, who protected Wade from the opposing team's defensive line, would have gotten him more credit than it did. He knew he wasn't the brightest guy in the world, but he was strong. He was in great shape. His qualities, however, didn't win him many friends. Yeah, 'cause you're also a jerk and asshole. Not that it mattered. But having Wade as a friend did have its perks. Because of Wade, Joel dated popular girls and got invited to the big parties. Because of Wade, some of the teachers cut Joel slack when he didn't bother with his schoolwork. Wade was useful. Usually. Joel turned his back on Wade and started poking around the old furnace. It didn't take him long to check it out. The bulk of it sat in a 15-foot square space, but its chutes reached beyond that space. Joel was particularly interested in the ones that stretched upward. Joel tilted his head back and squinted up at the ceiling. The light in this room was as pitiful as the light in the rest of the pizzeria, but Joel was pretty sure that one of the furnace chutes disappeared into a venting system on the ceiling. What if there was a way out through the system? Wade moved his foot. The slight shh sound made Joel turn around. He watched Wade push himself to his feet. Wade looked toward Joel as a clank emitted from down the hallway. From a pretty good distance. Both Joel and Wade cocked their heads and listened. The clank was followed by silence. They waited a few seconds. Then Joel motioned for Wade to follow him around the corner of the room's L. Wade hesitated but then complied. Joel led Wade to the base of the furnace's longest chute. Joel pointed upward. I want to climb up there and see what's beyond the end of the chute. I think it's a venting system. Wade frowned, but then nodded. He poked around the furnace's corroded pipes and chutes. Joel started to turn away, but Wade nudged him. I think this panel comes off, Wade whispered. He pointed. Joel saw what Wade was looking at. There was an oxidized metal panel on the furnace wall beneath the main chute. It was held on with bolts, but the bolts were crumbling. Joel saw a gap at the edge of the panel. He managed to stuff his thick fingers into the opening, took a breath and tugged. As he'd hoped it would, the panel fell away from the furnace with a metallic pop. Wade quickly reached out and caught it before it could clatter on the floor. Good hands, Joel whispered. Wade didn't respond. The panel wasn't all that big, but its removal exposed an opening big enough for Joel to shove his shoulders through. He immediately pushed it in through the opening and looked up. All right, his voice echoed in the closed chute. What? Wade asked. There are metal handholds and footholds in here. I think this is a maintenance chute. I'm going to check it out. Wade didn't answer, so Joel squeezed inside the chute and began climbing upward. The interior of the chute was nearly dark, but the glow of an exposed bulb on the wall near the chute managed to creep in through the cracks in the chute's decaying metal. Joel could see well enough. It just took a minute or so for Joel to climb high enough to get a better view of what lay beyond the top of the chute. As he suspected, it was part of a ventilation system. The maintenance chute ended in front of a huge metal fan. The fan's blades were rotating quickly and steadily. Oh no. Someone's gonna get cut in half by that, aren't they?
Probably.
That was the sound Joel had heard earlier. Joel peered at the blades. Frowning hard, he concentrated on seeing beyond the fast-moving curved metal. Yes, just as he hoped, he could see light. Bright light. Just a slice of it. But it was unmistakable. Joel could see sunlight. Wasn't it like nighttime? How could the sun be out already?
Unless they've been in here all night,
No,
which could be a possibility.
It's only been a couple of hours. This was their way out.
Maybe it's not outside. Maybe he thinks it is, though.
Maybe it's just the construction lights outside.
Perhaps.
All they had to do is figure out how to turn off the fan. Then they'd be able to slip through the openings between the blades and climb out through a vent in the roof. Yeah, someone's gonna get cut in half. I can already see it happening. Grinning, Joel backed down the chute and crawled out of the furnace. Wade was slumped against the wall once again, staring into space. Found the way out, Joel said, catching his breath. Wade blinked. His slack face regained a little color. Really? Joel nodded. There's a fan at the top of the chute. Beyond the fan, I can see a little sunlight coming through the vent in the roof, I think. All we have to do is figure out how to turn off the fan. Wade straightened. He was looking a little more like his usual self. We need to go get the others, he said. Joel shook his head. There's no time. The thing is out there, and it's not going to be long before it checks in here. The best thing we can do is get ourselves out but we can't leave. We'll get help for the others once we're out, Joel interrupted. He put as much sincerity in his voice as he could. The truth was, Joel couldn't have cared less about the others. Yeah, we figured.
Asshole!
He's probably going to be the one that gets cut in half, or Wade, honestly.
Yeah, I hope that he gets cut in half.
Adrian was a pretty boy who was too big for his britches. Jace was a cinnamon nerd. Lucia was a weirdo, and Kelly was... Well, admittedly, Kelly was pretty. But she wasn't pretty enough to come back before Joel's right to get out of the place alive. If that thing gets them before we can get help back here, Wade asked. What if it gets us before we can tell them about the way out? Joel countered. The thing could be right outside the door for all we know. Wade sucked in his breath, turned toward the closed door, and he nodded. Good, Joel said. Let's find a way to shut off that fan. Star, star, star. Adrian closed the office door as quietly as he could. He felt the tension bunch in his shoulders when the latch made a clicking sound. He put his head to the door and listened. He and the others had heard the huge creature coming down the back hall as they cut through the employee lounge to exit out the other door. It sounded like the creature went on down the hall, but Adrian couldn't be sure. Yeah, it's headed towards Joel and Wade. But Adrian couldn't be sure. It could have passed through the lounge after them and be coming for them. Adrian turned to look at Lucy and the others. Are you sure you can figure out how to get that radio working? He asked Lucia. Lucia stepped around the battered gray metal desk and headed toward the dusty wood credenza sitting against the wall. The credenza held a black rectangular box with silver metal knobs. A coiled cord attached to the microphone lay next to the box. I can try, she said, glancing over her shoulder at Adrian. Just see if you can keep that metal monster from getting in here while I do. Adrian
Okay,
nodded.
so it's not the same radio because the radio in Security Breach is green.
Who knows? Adrian nodded. He stepped over to the desk. Jace, can you help me lift this so we can put it in front of the door? Adrian wasn't sure Jace would be much help. Without Jace, Adrian would have to drag the desk. He didn't want to make that much noise. Jace, who looked even smaller than usual, sniffed, but he nodded. He did his best to lift one end of the desk while Adrian took the bulk of the desk's weight. Between them, they managed to position it in front of the door without creating a sound. As soon as the desk was in place, Adrian pointed at the black metal filing cabinet. See if we can put that on top of the desk. Jace nodded again. The contents of the filing cabinet rattled when they turned it on its side. Adrian tensed, but he didn't hear anything moving in the hall. He motioned for Jace to lift his end, and they managed to set the cabinet on top of the desk. Adrian immediately looked around the room. He spotted a vent cover near the floor under the credenza. While he and Jace had been moving furniture, Lucy and Kelly had huddled over the radio. They were whispering to each other now. Adrian couldn't hear everything they were saying. He caught the occasional words, frequency, wire, reroute, splice. Kelly seemed to be following what Lucia was telling her. She even offered her own ideas. Adrian was beginning to realize that there was far more to Kelly than she'd ever let on. Adrian motioned for Jace to come with him as he crossed the office to the credenza. Adrian was pretty sure their barricade wouldn't be enough to stop the thing if it wanted to come into the room. He didn't want Jace anywhere near the door in case that happened. Nearing the two girls, Adrian whispered, "Can you two move down just a little? I want to see if we can get that vent cover loose." Pointed at it. That way if the thing comes through the door, we'll have an escape route. Lucia froze in the middle of fiddling with a couple of the radio's wires. Her face paled. Kelly looked down at the vent cover. What's to stop the thing from using the ductwork to get in here? Maybe by taking the cover off, you're playing right into its hands. You think that thing has a plan? Jace asked, his voice pitched even higher than usual. Kelly shook her head. Not in the way you're thinking, no. From what I saw, admittedly briefly, at least in part mechanical. That means someone programmed it, and so it has some kind of protocol it's following. If that protocol involves removing all intruders, it probably also has the programming necessary to complete the task. I guess that would include being able to use any way possible of moving through this place. Adrian gazed at Kelly with ever-rising respect. He found himself noticing how pretty her eyes were. How pretty she was. Oh, come on!
The drama. The
Dude,
drama.
your girlfriend was literally just murdered in front of you and you're already trying to move on? What the fuck?
Oh, right. Wasn't Hope his girlfriend, the
Yeah,
one who
Hope
just
was his
died?
girlfriend.
The one who literally just died. Okay, they all deserve to die. I don't like any of them.
No, not just pretty. Kelly was beautiful. Even now, with her long brown hair tangled and her clothes filthy, she was stunning. How strange is that? Adrian thought. He'd been so blinded by Hope's look and vivacious personality that he failed to see Hope's friend.
Oh my god. You know, this reminds me of like when I played Danganronpa for the first time. It's like, I hope you guys all die. I don't like any of you.
Good thing the whole point of that game is for everyone to die.
Oh my god. Oh my god, she got fridged.
Hmm?
Fridged. Think I'm using the trope correctly, but it's basically when a woman dies to help the male's character motivation, or in this case, helps him get with another girl or something.
It's usually to provide tragic backstory for them.
Oh yeah, okay, maybe I'm using it wrong, but there is a term for it. I just can't think of it right now.
Adrian, are you okay? Lucy asked. You look freaked out. Adrian blinked and shook his head. Sorry. Lucy stepped away from the radio. She put a hand on his arm. It's okay, I know you're... I'm sorry about Hope. Adrian swallowed hard and nodded. He shifted his gaze from Lucy and Kelly, when he noticed Jace frowning at Lucy's hand on Adrian's arm. Adrian stepped back. He looked at the vent grate. I still think we should try to get the cover loose. If we get it off, we can prop it into place with something. I think we'll hear the thing coming if it comes through the vent duct. If it comes through the door, it could take us by surprise. Lucy and Kelly exchanged a glance. They were bonding, Adrian realized. Two brainy girls in a situation that had nothing to do with being popular or fitting in. Strangely, they were in their element. Kelly finally nodded. That sounds like a plan, she said. She and Lucia returned their attention to the radio. Adrian dropped to his knees and pulled out his pocket knife.
I'm glad it took two of their friends dying to just bring them all closer together. What a wholesome moment.
I mean, Lucy and Kelly were already bonding before they even knew the dude cheerleader was killed and before Hope was killed.
Yeah, so they're pretty much already friends.
Yeah. Star, star, star. Wade looked at Joel and shook his head. It's no use, he said. After turning every knob and pushing every button in the room's control panel on the furnace itself, he and Joel hadn't been able to get the fan to stop turning. Even flipping all the switches in the fuse box he'd managed to find in the furnace didn't do any good. Must be on another circuit, Wade said. Its own circuit, and who knows where that is. Joel let out a growl. Wade was familiar with the sound. Joel always growled like that when he missed a tackle. Wade understood Joel's frustration. He didn't share it. He was about to tell Joel, but Wade really didn't care whether they found a way to stop the fan. He couldn't summon the motivation. Truth was that he was numb. He'd been numb ever since he'd thrown up in the dining room. That was when he'd accepted that he really had just watched some kind of monstrous creature rip apart the girl he loved. Oh yeah, you had a crush on Hope.
Yeah, and Hope was dating Adrian, and he didn't like that, I think.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe he wasn't totally numb. He was finally facing the truth that he'd loved Hope, because Hope had been with Adrian and clearly didn't feel anything for Wade. Wade had been trying to convince himself for a long time that he just had the hots for her. But it wasn't the hots, it was love. And now she was gone.
You're a teenager.
Hey, Joel shook Wade by the shoulder. Wade frowned and pushed Joel away. Joel didn't protest. He bounced on the balls of his feet like an excited little kid. I have an idea. Wade waited for what he assumed would be something boneheaded. Remember how the lights went out when the creature showed up, before it killed Hope? Joel asked. Wade didn't want to remember anything about watching Hope die. But he nodded anyway. Something about that thing affects electricity, right? Joel said. Wade shrugged. If we could lure it in here...
That's the dumbest idea. Go ahead.
Joel continued. Get close. Power to that fan could shut off, shouldn't it? And we could get out? Wade raised an eyebrow. You mean after it tears us apart? I bet we'd fit through the fan just fine in pieces. Joel snorted and punched Wade in the bicep. Funny, but I'm not joking around. If the creature shorts things out, it could shut out the fan. We just need to make sure it's close and then get up the chute before it grabs us. Just as Wade suspected, something boneheaded. Yeah, this is how one of them's gonna get cut in half.
No, like one of them's gonna get cut in half, and the other one is just gonna get ripped apart by an animatronic. This is the stupidest plan. Even even the gang of Scooby Doo will be looking at you like, "What the fuck?"
It'd be easier to just try to jam the fan with something like physical.
Yeah, like
take a pipe and just stab at it a bunch of times.
My initial thought was to go I know it's where like she died and everything, but go to like the parts and service room, and they do have parts there, right? Get like an endo arm or whatever,
and
like,
use it to jam the fan.
Yeah, because like even if you can't find like a crowbar or a pipe handy, there's plenty of endo parts around. You can find an endo part and shove it up there.
Mm-hmm. Joel rubbed his pug-like jawline and looked at Wade. All you have to do is go out there and get the robot's attention and then get it to chase you back in here. Me? Wade glared at Joel. Why me? It's your stupid idea. Joel made a face and gestured at his fire plug-like body. I'm the center on the basketball team, not the forward. Power, not speed. Tapped his chest. linebacker, poked Wade's chest. Quarterback. You're the king of scrambler, remember? No one outmaneuvers tacklers like you do. Except the robot that's probably going to rip you all apart.
Right. No, this is a dumb plan. I hate this plan. They're both dead.
At least Wade's smart enough to realize it's stupid.
Yeah, but he's probably gonna do it anyway because he's a pushover and that's his friend.
And he's like dead inside anyway and he doesn't care.
Yeah, exactly.
Wade opened his mouth to protest, but he didn't get any words out. Joel actually had a point. Oh my god. And his plan...
No, he did not. This is not a point. This is the opposite of a point.
And his plan, although stupid and dangerous, wasn't half bad. Wade made himself remember how the creature had moved in the parts and service room. Was it fast? Not really. It was crazy strong, yeah, but when it moved, it was cumbersome. Could outmaneuver it. It's only cumbersome because it's not actually trying to chase you. It knows it'll get you eventually.
Right, exactly. And Watt's like the Terminator.
Yeah. Power
Dun
walk.
dun 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 dun.
The only way we're going to get out of here, Jill said, is to get past that fan. Okay, Wade said. Jill raised both eyebrows. Really? Why not? Wade meant that. Why not? It would give him something to do besides wallow in grief and terror.
Yeah, he's dead inside. He's gonna do it anyway.
Star. Lucia snatched her hand back when the radio's wires sparked for the third time. Crap. She resisted the urge to put her head in her hands. It wasn't working. She and Kelly had rewired the radio and reconfigured its frequency, but it wasn't receiving anything but static. The wires were so old that they wouldn't hold together. Lucia looked up at Kelly and shook her head. Kelly gently nudged Lucia aside. Let me try again.
You know what? I keep forgetting that this is a official FNaF book, and sometimes I just think that they're gonna throw a random F-bomb in there, like one of these days. Like there's just gonna be a tense situation, and they'll just go fuck, just one F-bomb out of nowhere.
That's all they're allowed.
Yeah, just one F-bomb in this family-friendly murder book.
Lucia stepped back. When Kelly started manipulating the wires, Lucia turned to watch Adrian and Jace. Adrian was pacing back and forth in front of the desk and filing cabinet barricade, and Jace was sitting cross-legged in front of the vent cover Adrian had removed and propped back into place. Jace was supposed to be watching and listening for the robot's approach through the ductwork. He was hunched over his sketchpad, drawing cute bunnies. My god. Is now the time to draw, dude? Cavorting in a forest meadow. Lucia couldn't help but smile. Everyone had their own coping mechanism. Lucia wanted to say something to Adrian, something comforting, something more than her sorry about Hope from earlier. But she wasn't any good at that kind of thing. What would be comforting anyway? It's horrible that your girlfriend lost her head. Do you want to talk about how you feel about Hope being brutally murdered? No and no. And was Hope murdered? Yes. Could a machine?
Yes.
Because she was pretty sure the creature was some kind of horrible machine. Commit murder? Murder required premeditation, not always. Have you ever heard of heat of passion? Could something that was built...
or like self-defense.
Mm-hmm.
Or like third-degree murder.
Could something that was built do that? Lucia doubted it. The thing was following its programming, however messed up that was. Nah, it's just a shoddy cleanup protocol to rip off the heads and arms of endoskeletons, and the thing thinks humans are endoskeletons.
Yeah, much like the first game.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, because that's the thing that phone guy said, that if it sees you, it probably thinks like you're an endo without its costume and try to shove you into a suit.
Honestly, I feel like being shoved into a suit, it would be a less horrible fate.
Honestly, yeah, this thing is just like ripping and tearing. Also, I can't help notice all the bunnies he's drawing. Rabbits.
Fun.
One!
Another place, another time. Lucia might have enjoyed kicking around these questions. She might even like discussing the ideas with Kelly. The more time Lucia spent with Kelly, even in this totally whacked out situation, the more she liked her. For the first time in her life, Lucia might have been making a friend. Good friend.
So
Well,
really, Hope was the friend that was holding them all back.
probably.
She dies and everyone becomes good friends.
Except for the one dude who is in love with her.
Yeah, basically.
And her boyfriend was just a piece of shit anyway, because he's like already looking at her friend.
You know, it's so weird.
While they'd worked on the radio, Kelly had chattered. Lucia was pretty sure it was nervous chatter, but it wasn't your typical girly nonsense. Kelly talked about her feelings and about how she always felt less than when she was around Hope.
Oh, okay, so she was a shitty friend.
That was why she was so shy, she explained. She never felt like she had much to contribute to the group. She was overshadowed. It didn't escape Lucia's awareness that this budding friendship with Kelly wouldn't have been possible if Hope was still alive. The Kelly-Hope dynamic wouldn't have had room for Lucia. This explained what Lucia had been feeling for the last half hour, she realized. Even under the horror of what they'd seen and the terror of what might have happened next, Lucia felt guilty. Now she knew why. She felt guilty because Hope's death benefited her. No more Hope meant Adrian was now available. Not that he'd show any interest in Lucy in that way. Yeah, because he wants Kelly now. And it meant a super cool girl could come out into the light and be herself. Which is the girl that your boy toy crush now has a crush on.
You know, I'm betting that the person who's reading these blurbs expects the audience to not remember what happens in between the epilogues. So it's like, oh yeah, they were brutally murdered in the last book. Forget about it. It's all for the best now.
Kelly sighed loudly. Nothing, huh? Lucia asked. She frowned at the radio. Then she snapped her fingers. Maybe there's a manual or something. Lucy rushed over to the filing cabinet. Even though it lay on its side, she could still get to the folders stuffed in its drawers. She began rifling through them. Although she sorted quickly, at one point, her hand came to an abrupt stop. Reaching into a file, she yanked out what looked like an old, yellowed operator's manual. She turned to the page she just glimpsed as she flipped through the file. Whoa, Lucia said. She waved the manual in the air. Kelly came over to her. Chase and Adrian remained where they were. What's that? Kelly asked. It's an operator's manual, Lucia said, skimming the pages quickly. She opened the manual to the last page and tapped the drawing she'd seen there. That's the thing! Kelly breathed. Lucia nodded. What'd you find? Adrian asked. Lucia flipped the page and read some more. It's an old user's manual, she said. It describes a bunch of different kinds of robot endoskeletons.
Like in the game, like right after the post-it note room.
The one
And
we
there is a radio outside of the post-it note room too.
The one we saw is either a mimic model 1 or 2. She ran her finger down the page. These things are pretty creepy. They have retractable and expendable limbs and contracting torso so they can fit into pretty much any mascot costume. Oh. That explains why I was able to fit inside of the thing.
What?
Basically, this thing is, remember how, like, someone did that one, gif of how the Glamrock Endo could probably, like, shrink down a bit to, like, contract in on itself to fit into Roxy and Chica's bodies? Because they're thinner and unlike the Chunky and, Freddy and Monty. It's a completely different endoskeleton than what's in the Glamrocks then.
Yeah.
So though, that's kind of terrifying. Like, imagine just a robot that can, like, suddenly, like, make itself, like, super short and then all of a sudden super tall.
That is terrifying. Although I still wonder why the endo blueprints are important.
Well, we're gonna find out.
I'm guessing.
Lucia frowned and read some small print under a sketch of the thing that had killed Hope. Oh geez, she gasped. What? Kelly said. Lucia looked up from the manual. Apparently the tech in the mix is pretty clunky. It says that if you encounter one of these things, you should immediately disconnect its power source and disassemble it. So it was defunct from the start, even before asshole McGee decided to use it to program it to clean up the mess for them.
That's so weird, because, like, you're writing in the literal blueprints to not activate them. Why not just make them functional to begin with?
I guess I have no idea, but yeah, that is kind of counterintuitive.
It's something Dadler would do.
She looked at the others. That's not good. We need to get out of here. Lucia hurried back to the radio and spent the next few minutes frenziedly moving around wires and turning dials. Kelly put her hand on Lucia's arm. Stop, Kelly said. We need to get a grip on ourselves. She glanced down at Jace. Maybe he has the right idea. Maybe we need to clear our heads for a few minutes. Lucia rolled her shoulders to release her pent-up tension. Okay. Kelly sat down on the floor next to Jace. She put her hand on Jace's knee. He flinched, but kept drawing. What's your favorite color? Kelly asked Jace. And why? Jace blinked several times, then frowned. Without looking up from his sketch pad, he said, yellow, because it makes me think of fuzzy chicks. He glanced up at Kelly.
Chica.
He glanced up at Kelly
Look,
through...
I love Chica, and I'll take her where I can get her.
He glanced up at Kelly through his messy, thick black bangs and gave her a half smile. She smiled back. Good. Mine's green. Bright green. Because it's the color of seedlings. That makes me think of how things can grow. How people can grow. She looked up at Lucia. How about you? Purple. It's the color of really good deep bruise. Something painful and real. The words had just tumbled out, and Lucia regretted them immediately.
Who talks like this? Who talks like this? Mine would be like, the color purple because I like purple.
Did she really want Adrian to know how dark her mind was? Lucia looked toward Adrian as Kelly repeated the question to him. Adrian, his face expressionless but still as model gorgeous as ever, said flatly, blue, like the sea. Makes me think of freedom. Out of the corner of her eye, Lucia noticed Jace glance up at her and look over at Adrian. A muscle twitched along his jawline, his eyes narrow. He knew, Lucia realized. He knew how she felt about Adrian, and he was jealous. Speaking of blue, Lucia said, I have an idea. She turned back to the radio and began fiddling with it. Lucia didn't really have an idea. She just needed to put her back to Adrian and Jace. As sweet as Jace's love of cute fuzzy things was, Lucy just plain and simply wasn't attracted to him. She might have looked like she paired well with nerds, but apparently she was all about heart-palpitating good looks like Adrian's. Star, star, star. Joel stood by the door to the hallway. He listened intently. At least 60 seconds had passed since Wade had gone through the door. Obviously, the creature wasn't outside in the hallway because the only sound Joel heard as he closed the door was Wade's soft footfalls headed down the hallway. The system's room's lights, though abysmally murky, were still unsteady. The creature wasn't nearby. Okay, now. Joel strode away from the door and trotted to the bottom of the chute, shoving his bulk through the barely wide enough opening, and began shimmering up the shaft. As he climbed, he thought about Wade. Would he be able to get the creature close without getting killed? Joel sure hoped so. In the back of his mind, Joel was aware that they were in this mess because of him. It had been his idea to come back to check out the construction site, but Wade had his part in it too. He was the one who'd spotted the way into the old pizzeria. Served him right to be the bait that would get Joel out of here. Dude, seriously? It was your fucking idea!
I don't know. Joel's probably gonna survive, but I want him to die.
Joel had to look out for number one. It was dog-eat-dog world. Every person for themselves. Joel stopped thinking and concentrated on climbing. I hope you're the one that gets cut in half.
He probably will be.
Star, star, star. Every little hair on the back of Wade's neck stood on end as he eased down the hallway toward the dining room. Looking left and right, rotating regularly to glance down the hall, Wade was aware that the creature could appear at any moment. He really hoped that flickering lights would give him enough warning to run. Just needed a head start. He figured if he had that, he could stay ahead of the mammoth animatronic killer. That was why he was headed toward the restaurant's main room. Even though it was littered with mangled tables and chairs, old party debris, and construction supplies, not to mention body parts, it was still the largest area in the old building. He wanted space to maneuver, but he wasn't going to get it. The lights started to flicker just as Wade was passing one of the swinging doors that led into the kitchen. Wade whirled. Where was it? Over the deafening sound of his pounding heart, Wade heard the tap, hiss, rasp of robots' footsteps. They were coming from the employees' lounge. Wade shot to the right and flung himself through the kitchen swinging door. Immediately turned right again, headed toward the other kitchen door. He hoped to get through the kitchen and come out into the hallway behind the creature while the thing searched for him. The kitchen went back. Scratching taps entered the kitchen. Too soon. Wade didn't have time to get to the other door. Not in the dark. Wade ducked behind the boat-sized stainless steel kitchen island. As he crouched, his hand slid over a stack of pizza pans. They cascaded to the ground and scattered with clangs and jingles. Anyone, human or not, would have noticed. The tap stopped. A heavy vibration shuddered through the kitchen. A long hiss came from the opposite side of the island. The thing was right there. Scrambling on his hands and knees, Wade gathered pizza pans as he crawled as fast as he could around the island, back in the direction he'd come from. The floor's reverberations told him the creature was following him. Wade shot to his feet, and he ran, at full speed. He raced around the island and blasted back to the door he'd just come through. As he surged into the hall, its lights flickered on. Wade glanced over his shoulder. The creature was nothing more than a hulking shape in the kitchen's continued darkness. Watching it move was like watching the undulating motion of a shadow monster. Its progress wasn't fast, but it was steady. Without thinking what he was doing, Wade started firing pizza pans towards his pursuer. He flung them as if they were frisbees, whipping them toward the robot's neck. Wade didn't have any delusions that the pizza pan could take out a monster made of metal, but he thought they might be enough of a nuisance to slow the thing down. He might even get lucky and dislodge a cable to disable the thing. Actually, yeah, that is smart. Or maybe not. Even if in the kitchen's blackness you could see the pizza pans bouncing off the robot's shoulders and chest. Wade started off toward the dining room. He lost his footing. He stumbled and fell, skidding down the hallway floor and away from the dining room. The creature exited the kitchen. The kitchen's lights came on as the swinging door closed behind the thing. The hall lights flickered and went out, but not before Wade was able to see the creature was now between him and the dining room. Wade tore into the employee's lounge and galloped through the room. As he ran, Wade formed a plan. He had briefly considered running down the hall toward the systems room, where the creature would pursue him down the hall, but the running the length of the hall in the dark, the thing right behind him, wasn't something he wanted to do. He needed more of a head start to get into the chute. What he had to do was get ahead of the creature before he let it spot him. Wade thrashed over a pile of chairs, once again losing his balance. He went down hard, striking his knee on the edge of a metal locker. He didn't let the pain stop him, though. He got back to his feet instantly, and he careened out of the room to the front hallway. Turning right, Wade dashed toward the lobby. It took only a couple seconds to get to the archway between the lobby and the dining room. There, Wade paused and looked back. The hallway behind him was empty. The lights were weak, but they weren't flickering. Where did the thing go? Oh, it's already headed towards Joel. Probably, I don't know. Or
Probably.
maybe it's being sneaky.
Mm-hmm.
Wade frowned and concentrated on catching his breath so he could hear something besides his own heavy panting. He listened hard. Wade took a few tentative steps toward the dining room hall. He kept listening. Then he heard it. The listening steps were close. Too close. The creature hadn't followed him. It had gone back the other way into the dining room. The lights flickered. The room went dark. Wade turned to run. Before he could, metal grazed his forearm, dug into his skin. Felt wet warmth flow down over his wrist and palm. The robot's hissing rasp was closer now. Wade couldn't see the thing, but he could sense it reaching for him. He could imagine its metal fingers extended toward his throat. Wade juked to the left and then dropped to his knees and rolled. As he came back to his feet, burning hot pain shot through his right shoulder. The creature had tried to grab him and missed, but its razor-sharp fingers had scoured Wade's flesh. Deep blood was rushing down Wade's side. He ignored it. Wade began darting left and right as if you're trying to avoid being sacked on the football field. Joel had been right. Wade was a good scrambler. So, he scrambled. He bobbed and weaved, and he scuttled toward the arcade. Slipping between a couple of pinball machines, Wade crouched and listened. The arcade's lights were still on, so the creature wasn't there yet. The thing's steps were steady and approaching. The arcade went dark. Wade held his breath, stayed low, and circled around the arcade's perimeter until he was back at the dining room. The dining room's lights came on, and Wade found himself standing next to an overturned table that lay in a puddle of torn purple striped tablecloth. Clutching his forearm to try not to think about the gash on his back, Wade scanned the area. He didn't have a big enough head start yet, especially now that he was injured. He was losing a lot of blood, and he could feel his legs weakening. He needed to hide until the creature moved further off. But where? Wade looked to the stage. No, too far. He glanced at the overturned tables and chairs. Not enough cover. He turned and looked at the piles of decaying body parts. His stomach flipped over. Skin crawled. Every fiber of his being yelled, "No!" He ignored the device. Oh, no!
Well, if he hides in the pile of dead bodies, the robot won't go after him because he's already in the pile.
True. But still. Ugh.
Yeah, no, still.
Getting a running start, Wade leapt over a couple of chairs and he dived right into the pile of dismembered arms, legs, heads, and torsos, not allowing himself to think about what he was doing. It's just a pile of sweaty football players, he told himself. Wade buried himself under the depressed, deconstructed remains of the robot's old victims. Like an animal, he burrowed beneath the spongy flesh and brittle bones. Keeping his eyes closed, Wade breathed as little as possible as he flattened himself to the floor. Then he lay still and listened. Even with his eyes closed, Wade knew when the dining room lights went out. The thing was nearby. Wade held his breath. Blood continued to flow from his wounds. He could feel the thick warmth track across his skin. The robot's screaming taps came closer and closer. Then they stopped. Wade continued to hold his breath. He told himself not to think about where he was. The robot's footfall started up again, began moving away. Wade allowed himself the tiniest bit of an inhale. He ignored the fetid smell that assaulted his nostrils. He was thankful that he had emptied his stomach earlier. Even though it roiled now, it didn't heave. The robot's footfalls continued to move off. It sounded like it was headed toward the stage. The dining room's lights came back on. Wade waited. He remained still until he heard the break in the footfall's cadence. Wade was pretty sure the creature was headed up the steps of the stage. That was far enough. Now was Wade's chance. Bursting up through his revolting hiding place, Wade batted aside and clawed and steadied himself on his feet. Then he ran. Wade ran hard, harder and faster than he'd ever run before. Wade made it to the doorway to the back hallway in seconds. As he headed down the hall, the dining room lights went out behind him. The creature was in pursuit. You know what I just realized?
What?
When the thing was first activated, the lights didn't go out. So why does it cause power outages now?
I'm not sure.
Maybe it needs to get the power from somewhere now because it's not plugged in.
Was it plugged in the first story?
Yeah, the guy had to plug it into the wall and like into his laptop for a bit.
Okay, so it's probably like draining the power from like things around it now.
Yeah. Star, star, star. Joel wasn't sure how long he waited, clinging to the handholds in the chute just below the fan. Probably wasn't long, but his muscles were starting to spasm when he finally heard the sound he'd been waiting for. Pounding footsteps headed this way. Joel shifted so he could look down the chute. The pounding paused for a nanosecond, and then the door to the assistant's room banged open. More pounding. Joel looked down. Wade's head appeared at the bottom of the chute. Wade looked up and quickly started scrambling into the chute. The lights in the assistant room started flickering. Wade was fully in the chute now. His face covered in sweat, stark white, looked upward. His gaze met Joel's, and the chute went black. Wade screamed. Thudding, pounding, clanging, metallic rat-a-tat-tats, another scream. This was all going on below Joel. but he didn't focus on that. He knew what it meant. Joel! Wade cried out. Help me! Joel looked down into the darkness. He couldn't see Wade, but he didn't have to see to know what was happening. The creature was killing his friend. Wait, okay. Wade's getting torn apart and Joel's gonna get cut in half. Okay.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen.
Serves
Like,
Joel
they're
right, though.
both gonna get it. Also, I'm surprised that it wasn't the case where, like, Wade was, scrambling to get up as the creature was pursuing them, and Joel just hits Wade in the face so he can get out through the fan, and then he gets shredded. Because that's what I thought was gonna happen.
I wouldn't have put it past him.
No.
But Joel was more interested in what was going on above him. He looked up. Between the sounds of struggle and violence, he listened for what he wanted to hear. And he heard it. The fan had stopped whirring. Some of the whoosh was winding down, slower and slower. Wade wailed. Squelching, wet grinding sound filled the chute. Then a thud. Joel reached up in the dark and his knuckles encountered one of the nearby motionless blades. He cut it and stilled the fan. He pushed himself upward, shoving his bulk through the narrow opening between the blades. The opening was a lot tighter than Joel thought it would be. He'd never gotten a good look at the fan. It was hard to visualize while it was spinning. It was a big fan, though, and he'd hoped he'd been able to squeeze through it when it stopped. He was wrong.
Haha.
Although Joel had been able to get his head and neck through the opening easily, his shoulders were another story. He had to squirm to shove himself upward. He finally got his chest between two of the blades, but he was too big to get through. Although he grunted and strained, Joel couldn't move any further. Couldn't get back up either. He was stuck. Going as limp as he could, hoping that relaxing his muscles might free him, Joel listened to the clunking and clanking going on below him. He still couldn't see, but it sounded like the creature was pulling Wade's body out of the chute. Joel
Also, if you can't see, that means that the light that you saw through the fan was a fake.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Sounded like the creature was pulling Wade's body out of the chute. Joel had no doubt Wade was dead. Wade hadn't made a sound in several seconds. The other sounds had made it pretty clear the creature was doing to Wade the same thing it had done to Hope. Now it sounded like the creature was gathering Wade's parts. Maybe it was going to take them back to the dining room to put in them with all the other cut-up bodies. Joel twisted his shoulders and tried to free himself from the blades. He idly wondered what programming made the metal creature dismember a human piled up its pieces. Just a dumbass who thought he could make his work easier.
Yeah.
And that thought was the last coherent one he had.
Good.
The lights in the systems room came back on. The fan reactivated. Its sharp blades immediately began chewing through Joel's arms. He howled. His consciousness assaulted by the most pain he'd ever felt. It was worse than he could ever have imagined. The fan's blades picked up speed. They cut through Joel's arms and chest, cleaving him in two. As the bottom half of his body thumped its way down the chute, Joel's brain continued to process the pain just for another couple seconds as the fan began chopping the rest of him into bloody bits.
That's a pretty powerful fan.
I mean, it's an industrial vent fan.
I guess, but he was, like, right in there, and the thing was at a full stop.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean... I mean...
If anything, I would have thought that his body would block the fan from moving. Realistically, but...
Airplanes are capable of, like, their propeller engines. They're able to, like, slice clean through, completely obliterate two whole frozen geese carcasses.
Yeah. Yeah. Those fans are, like, bigger than, I guess I'm just imagining the vent smaller than what it actually is.
I mean, if a big burly dude could fit at least his upper through it.
Yeah, no. Yeah, then that's, like, a bit bigger fan. Okay, now I'm thinking more of, like, the fans from Portal and Stray, and that makes more sense to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those kinds of fans.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Also,
2
I'm
more
trying
dead.
to...
Now there's just 4 left.
And now they're all, like, really close friends now that Hope is dead. But, I have a feeling that, someone else is gonna die, probably one of the more shallow ones. I want the guy, what's his name? Jace with the pocket protector. He can live. I want him to live.
Let the nerd live and let the full of himself pretty boy die.
Yeah, and let the girls die too.
Oh,
Because
even
whatever.
Kelly, even though she's done nothing wrong.
Okay, Kelly and Jace can both live. How's that?